everyone! So today I thought I would bring you something that is a staple of this channel, and that is a book review. So as many of you know, in my last video I talked a little bit about depression and anxiety and how that's affected my reading, but I did mention that I had been getting back into the horror genre and the science fiction and fantasy genre. So the first book I'm going to bring you is Stephen King's Salem's Lot. Now, this is just over, it's almost 700 pages, and it took me the better part of 2 months to read. I'm not actually sure on the dates. I stopped tracking using Goodreads just because I felt a lot of social pressure with that. So I just kind of distanced myself from that, and I just kind of go at my own pace because I don't want to feel bad about my reading speed and my reading habits. And for me, if you love Goodreads, that's totally cool. It's just for me, I found myself feeling really pressured to keep up with goals and with everything, so I just kind of ignore it now. But yeah, so I finished Salem's Lot. This is the first book by Stephen King that I have read. My friend Cassie is a big fan and has been trying to get me to read Stephen King for years now, and I've resisted and resisted because I had heard he was really misogynistic and like it just wasn't my thing. But I don't know why I had this weird hankering to read Stephen King, and so I picked up Salem's Lot. I also picked up Firestarter, which will probably be the next Stephen King novel that I read. I decided to start with Salem's Lot because growing up I had a love of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. Lestat was my bae growing up. Like, he is the pinnacle of what I think a vampire should be. I actually have a signed copy of the Vampire Lestat on my bookshelf. I haven't read the newer one. I haven't read Prince Lestat yet. I kind of don't really want to. I kind of want to keep that nostalgia value for the Vampire Chronicles for me, but I devoured those books and read them and reread them. So I figured Salem's Lot was a good place to start because it revolves around vampires. So a quick little spoiler-free synopsis, and then I'll start getting into some more deeper, like, textual analysis. Salem's Lot basically focuses around Ben Mears, who is a middling author. He's published 2 works of some renown, and he had a traumatic event happen in his childhood in the town of Jerusalem's Lot, or Salem's Lot, which is shortened to, and he decides to go back and write his 3rd novel in this town. He has this kind of connection to this old house that's connected in the town, the Marsden house, and he seeks to rent it and finds out it's actually rented by other people, and it kind of deals with small town mentality and kind of like outsider status, which is really interesting. And yeah, this book was, I will, before going into spoilers, say I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought it was fantastic. I don't really give star reviews anymore. I have decided against that. It's just, I liked it, I didn't like it. It's, you know, I want to reread it or I don't want to reread it. That's basically how I'm going to start rating books. I do recommend this if you like horror, if you like vampires. I think this is one of those cornerstone pieces in vampire literature, which I really enjoy vampire literature. I think it's really fun. Vampires are my favorite out of all of the like zombies, werewolves, vampire kind of like that thing. Vampires are my favorite. I don't know why. I think maybe because I grew up on them, so vampires are my favorite. But yeah, so that is a little bit of a non-spoilery review. If you don't want to be spoiled for this book, turn off the video, you know, like, subscribe, comment down below, all that jazz. And now I'm going to get into the good stuff, the spoilers and the textual analysis. So Stephen King won me over quite a bit when he mentioned Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. I think at multiple points during this book. I'm not entirely sure because it did take me quite a while to read this book, but he definitely mentions it, and like, you can draw parallels between Marsden House and Hill House, and it is so great. The kind of concept of an evil house and how the house has kind of a design of its own, and it is in and of itself a separate entity, is absolutely fascinating, and I really enjoy that. It made me want to reread The Haunting of Hill House, which I don't own a copy of anymore. When I moved, I got rid of my copy because it was part of a set. I have since repurchased it in the matching set for the rest of my Shirley Jackson books, and I am so excited to reread this. I will probably do a bit of an intertextualities book like review. If you guys remember, I did one for Northanger Abbey. I do really want to do one for The Haunting of Hill House because I think that is absolutely fascinating. So yeah, absolutely adore this for that reason. However, caveat, Stephen King has one female character in this book that actually, you know, shows some agency and kind of is treated with respect, and that is the character of Susie Norton. And Susie Norton is unceremoniously fridged in the last third of the book. She is set up as Ben Mears' female paramour. She gives in to him and asks him to have sex with her, which was kind of this weird, like, I feel like it's a very 1980s, 1990s sci-fi fantasy horror thing that goes on, the like weird sex scene that you're like, okay, that's fine. I honestly, I'm not big on reading sex scenes. It doesn't really float my boat. I'd much rather read about like the characters and the development and the plot. For me, it was just kind of this little aside that I was like, all right, so we're just kind of doing that. So she is a badass. Honestly, she is fantastic. She has a degree. She wants to move out of her family's house. She locks sides with her mother, who kind of is a foil for her. Her mother is very, you know, wants her to marry somebody from the town and doesn't like her getting involved with this outsider and doesn't really want her to be her own person, whereas Susie is very determined to be her own person. And even when Ben brings forth the whole vampire theory that he and Matt have come up with, she decides to go and investigate on her own, and unfortunately that is when she is killed off. What I really didn't like was the fact that Ben then had to kill her and release her and save her still from herself. And it just kind of is this really awful moment in the book where I'm like, it's like, if I hadn't already been so invested and the writing wasn't, you know, above average, I probably would have given up on this book, and I kind of saw it coming because she was the only female character who was interesting. But it still is a good book. That just really bothers me quite a lot. The only other there are two other female characters other than Susie and her mom that are mentioned with any great regularity. Actually, three. There's Ava, the boarding house woman, who is killed off and doesn't really have much of a plot. There is Mabel, who is the town gossip, and you really don't meet her. You just like hear about her talking about people behind their backs. She seems kind of fabulous, and I'm really sad that she ended up a vampire in the end. And then there is the town whore, whose name actually escapes me. That is how little of an impact she made on me. All I remember is that she was cheating on her husband with the telephone man, and she gets beaten. And like, yeah, a woman gets beaten in this for adultery. So if that is a trigger for you, do not read this book. But I kind of just skimmed through that part, and it bothered me. It really bothered me. There's no apologizing for that. It really bothered me. His treatment of women is kind of crap in general. I still enjoyed the book. It's the same as when I'm reading classics. This was published this is one of his earlier books, so I'm gonna guess in the 80s. I'm just looking at the colophon. 1975. So, yeah, Stephen King, not a leading feminist with this, you know, feminist movement in the 60s, and, you know, that's a little unfortunate, but not surprising. But I did really enjoy the whole, and the whole feminism thing, it really bothers me because he mentions Shirley Jackson, and I'm like, oh, she was so fantastic, and so I don't know whether or not she would have liked this book because of that. She wrote such strong female characters and such complex and nuanced female characters, and Stephen King really failed at that. That's my main gripe with the book, is the lack of nuanced female characters. I'm hoping, as I read more of his bibliography, he kind of improves on that. I did start very near the beginning of his writing career, so I'm hoping that improves. If anybody has any experience with him, let me know. But yeah, this in general was a fairly enjoyable read. It did take me quite a while to get through, but that is no fault of Stephen King's writing. I actually quite enjoyed his writing style, and it did make me want to explore more. I do really like the parallels with Shirley Jackson. Didn't love the female character kind of marginalization. There were also, as far as I could tell, no people of color There was one person with a disability in this, and he was treated rather awfully and kind of, it was not a fit ending. And yeah, that's basically it for diversity in this book. I mean, it is set in small town USA. That is fairly indicative. From my understanding of small town USA, I'm basing that on my knowledge of small town Canada, because I am not an American citizen, so I don't really know small town USA. But yeah, I am hoping that they get a little bit more diverse, a little bit better at characterizing female characters, but overall, thoroughly enjoyable. If you like vampire stories, if you like horror, and you kind of want to explore Stephen King, I would definitely recommend this book. So that is my review of Stephen King's Salem's Lot, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye!